I liked being out on the street where the action was. I liked being at the White House or the Supreme Court or Capitol Hill, or, when I was a local news reporter, the crime scenes in the courthouse and City Hall. That's where the drama of news takes place. TV studios, by and large, are kind of sterile, cold, dark places. Of course, the anchors, it's a more prestigious job and you get paid more money. And I had two very young kids at the time. And finally, I thought, I'm 40 years old or close to 40. Maybe I ought to try this anchor thing. So I was 39 years old and 9 months before I ever anchored my first newscast. And so that was an interesting transition from being on the street to being in the studio and being kind of the face of the newscast. And I enjoyed it, but truth be told, I like being out in the street where the action is.
How is it different behind a desk? I mean, skill-wise? From out as a reporter, you ask the questions, you hunt around, you find the story. Behind the desk, the story is given to you. So how is that a different kind of transformation?
Well, part of the thing is you're on for, there were sometimes we were on 2 hours or 4 hours. That's a lot of time to be on. When you look at a reporter out doing a live broadcast at the scene of a crime or a sporting event, they're generally speaking, if they're on for 90 seconds, that's a long time, maybe 2 minutes tops. And so to have to be on for that amount of time versus being on for 2 hours and being the face of the newscast and kind of the ringmaster of the circus, it's very different. It took some getting used to for me, but finally I think, I got pretty good at it. Our show was #1 for a long time, and I enjoyed it. And you have to have kind of be more of a jack of all trades as an anchor. You got know a lot about a lot of different things, and the ad-libbing skills to be able to tap dance, especially when breaking news happens, is a great skill to acquire. So I enjoyed it. It was a nice transition, and it was nice the familiarity you get in the community and the recognition. So I enjoyed it, and maybe someday go back to something similar, but right now I'm doing this political thing. So
excellent. Seems that you like it.
I do.
2008. I'm just following your life. You're a busy man.
Yeah, I
have a lot of notes.
I tend not to sit still.
As evidence here, 2008, you left to start your own local own news reporting, public relation, and political analysis agency, Mark Curtis Media.
.com.
What is it? .com. What does it do? Why did you start your own business?
Well, as a practical matter, I lost my job. The media world is changing. Radio, television, newspapers, the traditional media outlets are hurting bad financially. The audience is leaving for the internet or other places, and I got downsized, so to speak.
Oh,
no. Yeah, and I was
just when you get all cushy and comfy.
Yeah, I was one of the. After 14 years of the same company, it was pretty hard to take. I was one of the first people to get tossed overboard. Now we're seeing it. Media outlets across the country, from coast to coast, a lot of the senior employees are being let go because who has the bigger salaries, and so it was a challenging time, but it was a good timing, if there was ever a good time to lose your job, because the presidential campaign was just starting to gear up. And so I'd always been a political junkie. I'd covered every presidential campaign since Ronald Reagan was elected in '80, and I said, to heck with this. I'm just going to get on a plane and go to Iowa and New Hampshire and just show up at all the places the rest of the media is at and all the candidates are at, and I'm just going to kind of elbow my way into the crowd and become a political analyst and freelance reporter out on the campaign trail. And I did, and it was fun.
And that's where this book came from.
Yes.
That was the beginning of this book. So you, in this book, and it's a wonderful book, it's Age of Obama, a reporter's journey with Clinton, McCain, and Obama in the making of the president, 2008.
Yeah, and the good thing is the title is so long that the book is only 3 pages, so it's a quick read. It's
I had to take 2 breaths just saying the title.
I know.
But it's a really good read. I enjoyed it, the stories. I like the whole fact is that you approach it as going into the towns and speaking at the bars and speaking to the people in the restaurants and the coffee shops and really get an idea of what America is about, as well as the political side.
Right, and sometimes we get this... bass backwards, if I can say that on television.
You can.
But this is cable. I can say anything I want. We get it backwards, especially in the media. The people think that the presidency and the election is about the candidates. And it's not. The democracy is about the people. Yeah, it's about who we pick, but we don't have royalty in this country. We don't have kings and queens. We elect a new president every 4 years, or re-elect the current one. We elect a new Congress every 2 years, and the democracy belongs to the people. So I thought, it's great. Somebody's going to go out and write all kinds of inside politics books about this campaign, and they're going to focus on the candidates and the strategists and the media and the pundits and all of that, and that gets done every 4 years. But I thought, I'm in these small towns and big cities, and I'm in coffee shops and bar rooms and talking to to folks at the end of the day or the beginning of the day. And I started getting a lot of really colorful interviews and interesting perspectives on the country and on the election. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to write about. This is going to be kind of a road trip book. Yeah, I'm going to write about the politics. You have to. I mean, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. But I wanted to focus more on the people that were affected by the election and what their hopes and dreams were for the election, and really get more of a slice of Americana.
Politicians, just by nature of being in that area and surrounding themselves with other politicians, don't really get that, because they're not really privy to going to the local hangouts and really, anonymously being able to pick up on what the conversations are, what people are talking about, what their fears are, what their hopes are.
It's one of the problems with American politics. It's the insular part of it. You always hear this phrase about inside the Beltway, and it's really true. Mm-hmm. You live there, you work there, you breathe the politics, and I think sometimes people get disconnected with what the public is thinking. And this, neither party has a monopoly on this. It happens to both. Mm-hmm. You go there in Washington, D.C. is a lot of work and a lot of lobbying and a lot of parties and a lot of big events, and everybody's somebody, okay? And so the social scene in the pecking order is interesting. And then sooner or later, you're a member of Congress, and instead of flying home for the weekend to spend with your constituents, you're still in Washington, either talking about legislation or hobnobbing with folks or partying or whatever. And over time, I think you lose touch with, every now and then somebody in the press will do an interview with a presidential candidate, and they'll say, how much does a loaf of bread cost, or how much is a gallon of milk? And they're sitting there dumbstruck because they don't know.
They don't know.
And I think, a lot of times we would see the problems coming. I think if a year ago or a year and a half ago, some of these politicians would go down to the corner coffee shop or diner or bar room, and they would have heard people talking about, geez, I'm having trouble making my mortgage this month because my adjustable rate mortgage has gone up. And I think we would have seen the whole housing crisis thing a lot sooner than when it gets to the crisis point, when it's a 5-alarm fire. Boy, everybody notices it.
You can see the smoke then.
This just in. But sometimes I think politicians, if they got out in the communities more and weren't so insulated by Washington or Sacramento or City Hall, would kind of see these trends and problems arising quicker.
Mm-hmm. I agree, definitely. Story of your first meeting with McCain.
That was fun. When I was working as a Senate aide, this is back in '93, there's a little subway that runs underneath the U.S. Capitol. It fans out to the 6 House and Senate office buildings. It is a convenience, and many people don't know about it because it's not available to the general public. But, sometimes they say, we have a 10-minute vote on the House floor, and it takes a while to get there, and there's 535 people scrambling. So they put in this little subway system to get the members of Congress to and from the Capitol. And there was one rule. If you were a Senate staffer, you could ride it as well. But if you were on there and the train stopped and a member of Congress approached, you were to stand up and offer them your seat.
Okay.
So here it is, early 1993, and I'm on there with a friend of mine, and we're chatting away, and all of a sudden the little subway stops, and we look, and here's Senator John McCain. And so I stood up. I said, Senator, welcome aboard, but please take my seat. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, no, boys. I don't stand on ceremony. I'm not like that. I'm not one of those senators. You just take your seats and I'll stand. I'm fine. So we took him at his word and sat back down. And the next thing, John McCain sits down right square in my lap.
He sat on your lap.
And he throws his legs up across the lap of my friend. You imagine this happening on BART, okay? And then he puts his arm around me and looks me in the eye and says, well,
nice.
Boys, how are things going today?
Nice.
And we didn't know what to do. We are junior staff members in Congress, and we're just kind of laughing kind of sheepishly, and the train goes off to the, Senate office building, and he got off and shook our hands and left. And I thought, if this guy ever becomes president of the United States, I'm going to have one hell of a story to tell. Of course, he never became president, but it's a great story, and that's how I met John McCain, and I got to know him quite well throughout the years.
I think John was hitting on you.
Could be. Who knows? Don't tell Cindy.
I won't. So tell us where we can find out more about your book.
You can find more about my book, Age of Obama, on my website, which is markcurtismedia.com. The book is also for sale at some of the local bookstores, such as Book Passage in San Francisco, Rakestraw Books in Danville, Lafayette Bookstore in Lafayette, and most important, you can get it online if you don't feel like going out to the bookstore. But I really want people to patronize their local bookstore and ask for it.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Christina.
And thank you for watching SF Live. I'm Christina Marie Flores. Join us next time. Thank you.